Public anxiety, tariffs, and the erosion of Trump's economic advantage. A new NPR-PBS News Marist poll reveals a growing sense of economic unease among Americans and presents a troubling picture for President Donald Trump as he approaches the midpoint of his second term. While Trump has long positioned himself as a president who understands the economy, the data now suggests that this perceived strength may be slipping perhaps more sharply than at any other point in his political career. At the center of voter concern is affordability. 70% of respondents say that their local area is no longer affordable for average families, a dramatic increase from 45% just a few months earlier. 61% report that the economy is not working for them personally, and a majority believe the country is currently in a recession even though, by technical definitions, it is not. This gap between economic indicators and public perception matters. It reflects not just economic data, but lived experience. Rising prices, persistent inflation, and uncertainty about the future have shaped how Americans feel about their financial stability, regardless of official metrics. Recent economic indicators help explain this anxiety. Unemployment has ticked up to a 4-year high, inflation remains elevated, and Federal Reserve officials have pointed to a specific driver of price increases: tariffs. According to the Federal Reserve Chair, inflationary pressure is now concentrated in goods rather than services, particularly in sectors affected by tariffs. This distinction is politically significant. Unlike global shocks or long-term business cycles, tariffs are a policy choice. They represent a lever that the president directly controls and one that, by design, raises prices on imported goods. The poll reflects this reality. 2/3 of Americans say they are very or somewhat concerned that tariffs will negatively affect their personal finances. While concern is strongest among Democrats and independents, more than 1/3 of Republicans also express worry, an unusually high figure for a policy that sits at the core of Trump's economic agenda. When asked about their top economic worries, nearly half of respondents cited prices and cost of living as their primary concern. Housing came a distant second, followed by tariffs themselves. These categories overlap in practice. Tariffs increase prices, prices strain household budgets, and affordability becomes the defining issue of daily life. What makes this especially damaging for Trump is that he is receiving more blame for high prices than most presidents would. Historically, voters tend to over-attribute economic outcomes to presidents regardless of their actual influence. In Trump's case, however, the connection is clearer. His administration has aggressively promoted tariffs as a central economic tool, and he frequently praises them publicly. That praise becomes a liability when voters experience higher costs at the checkout counter. For years, Trump's reputation as a businessman insulated him from criticism. Many voters were willing to overlook his rhetoric or behavior because they believed he could manage the economy. In the 2024 election, economic dissatisfaction played a major role in his return to office, with Trump promising a new, golden age, of prosperity. Now, that advantage appears weakened. Only 36% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the economy, his lowest score on this issue in Marist polling. This figure matches the low point reached by President Joe Biden in 2022, when inflation peaked near 9% and Democrats suffered losses in the midterm elections. The erosion is especially pronounced among Latino voters, a group that shifted toward Trump in 2024 largely due to economic concerns. Today, only about 30% of Latino respondents approve of Trump's economic performance, signaling a significant reversal. What distinguishes Trump from other presidents facing economic dissatisfaction is the perception that his own policies have made conditions worse. Tariffs are not abstract economic forces, they are deliberate interventions. This makes them easier to attack politically. Looking ahead to the midterm elections, this creates a strategic dilemma for Republicans. Democrats are likely to frame tariffs as a tax on consumers and a driver of inflation. Republicans, meanwhile, may feel pressure to distance themselves from a policy that is increasingly unpopular even within their own party. Trump's own rhetoric has not helped. At recent rallies, he has praised tariffs while simultaneously suggesting that Americans may need to consume fewer imported goods, fewer discretionary purchases. Telling voters to tighten their belts is an unusual and risky message for any president, especially one who campaigned on abundance and growth. Perhaps most striking is a shift in party trust on the economy. Democrats now hold a narrow advantage over Republicans on which party voters trust more to handle economic issues, a 4-point lead. While modest, this represents a dramatic reversal from 2022, when Republicans enjoyed a double-digit advantage. Independents appear to be driving much of this change. As their confidence in Republican economic leadership declines, the political map for 2026 begins to look more competitive and potentially dangerous for the GOP. Despite these warning signs, Trump continues to enjoy strong support among Republicans. While approval within the party has dipped slightly, it remains high. This resilience underscores an important reality: Trump's appeal has never been purely economic. For many supporters, loyalty to Trump is rooted in cultural identity, grievance politics, and a perception of existential conflict between us and them. In that framework, economic costs, including higher prices, may be tolerated if they are seen as part of a broader struggle over national identity, immigration, or political power. This helps explain why immigration and cultural issues continue to dominate Trump's messaging, even when economic concerns are clearly front and center for voters. Overall approval of Trump's job performance now stands below 40%, the lowest of his second term. Even more concerning for Republicans is the intensity of opposition. Half of registered voters say they strongly disapprove of Trump's performance. Independents, a critical midterm voting bloc, show particularly low approval. History suggests that such intensity matters. Voters who feel strongly are more likely to turn out in midterm elections. In recent years, Democrats have shown an increased ability to mobilize in lower turnout contests, further heightening Republican vulnerability. While Trump remains personally popular within his base, he will not appear on the ballot in 2026. That absence has historically made it harder for Republicans to energize their voters, especially when enthusiasm is driven more by Trump himself than by the party. Notably, Trump appears increasingly detached from the electoral consequences for his party. In recent interviews, he has emphasized his belief that he has created the greatest economy in history, while acknowledging that voters may not recognize it immediately. This framing suggests a shift in focus from winning elections to shaping legacy. Barred from running again in 2028, Trump may be less concerned with short-term political fallout than with how his presidency is judged historically. That posture, however, leaves congressional Republicans exposed. If voters continue to associate high prices and economic stress with Trump's policies, the political cost will likely be paid by candidates who remain on the ballot. The new polling data function is a flashing red light for President Trump and his party. Economic anxiety, driven by rising prices and reinforced by tariff policy, has eroded one of Trump's most durable political strengths. While cultural loyalty continues to sustain his base, broader public confidence, especially among independents and key swing groups, appears to be weakening. As the midterm elections approach, the question is not whether voters feel economic pressure, they clearly do, but whether Trump and Republicans can convince them that relief is coming, and that the cost of patience is worth paying. So far, the data suggest growing skepticism.